Crack News. Welcome back, welcome back. Let's talk about this intrusion um, that we see that keeps confronting us. Mm. The war, the war, the war. That's all people talk about, because that's what the main thing is going on. The war. What's going on in the war today? People fighting, shooting, looting. It ain't okay, but everything's in control. Let the good times roll. What they say, it ain't nothing but music. Now, I don't think they're gonna send out notifications for this one. Hold on. Trump's America. Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a nap before that game. Still upset about the Piston game. But anyhow, let's get to it. That need to happen. Now today, yes, they lost Outlaw. I told y'all some bad luck bastards. It was the biggest collapse in history. You can go watch that video on my page. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. Now here we're talking about the Iran conflict. The United States of America bombed. And hit the like button too. If you're new here, subscribe to the page, please. Thank you. Now, oh, you'll find out once you see it. Now, here's the situation. The United States struck in Tehran and hit an oil refinery that's making what they call black rain. Oil is spewing in the air, and all of this money is being lost. Now, this is a very dangerous game and an act of desperation from the United States of America. Since they can't get control of the war, which has gone far longer than what they've ever imagined, thinking the war would be over. Now they're striking oil refineries? You really want to do that? 25% of the nations, the world, not the nation, the world, oil is in Iran. You're willing to blow that up? Do you know what that's going to do to the stock market? Do you know what that's going to do? Do you know what that's going to do to the economy? Oil on fire? You think the Dow is something now? S&P is going to drop into the toilet. Gold is going to continue to drop. See, all of these things have a domino effect when it comes to cost and revenue. People with money understand situations where money is going the opposite way and from where it's supposed to go. People with money see this and go, what the hell? Well, look, the scenarios go like this. The more people think they know something, it proves the less and less they do know. Now, they keep saying that their missile defense is almost done and over. They don't have any missiles left. Yet, Iran keeps hitting targets. So, I don't know how that is. If you disabled all of their missile systems, how are they still hitting targets? I thought y'all said y'all disabled them. The United States got caught using imagery from Call of Duty in their video clips showing targets they've hit. People who play video games said, wait a minute, hold on, that's Call of Duty. And they're making it more like a movie than actual reality. Trump claimed he was doing things to help collegiate athletes. And of course, everybody wants to ask him about the war. And he's surprised. Why would you be surprised? People want to ask you about something that's affecting their lives when our country is at war. Can we talk about something else, please? No. What do you want to talk about? The Cubs? Man, the Cubs, this really look like their year, Trump. Terrible idea. It's terrible by the White House to even put that out. It just shows you how dumb Americans have become. It's a shame what's happening to this country. My thing is, I don't think there's any recovery from it. To be truthfully honest. Now, looking at how this played out, it seemed like a desperation strike. Knowing the United States saying, well, if we shoot one little bitty oil refinery, but that could cause monumental damage and effect. Now Trump says he's not going to use the Kurds. That the Kurds want to go in there, but he doesn't really want to use the Kurds. Because he knows what's going to happen. If he sends the Kurds in there to go after, they're going to give the Kurds American weapons and tell the Kurds, okay, go in there and do our dirty work. And the Kurds are gonna get slaughtered. And when they get slaughtered, they're gonna be like, well, where are the American troops? And then Trump's gonna look real stupid. Iran is gonna light them up real quick. And once they get wiped up, the Iranians will now have American weapons. And they're gonna look real weak. So this is why I was saying, if you're gonna go ahead and arm the Kurds, understand what's gonna happen to the Kurds when they get overwhelmed. Well, that's not a Trump decision. That was a military decision. See, Trump people's like, well, let's get the Kurds, let's give them some American weapons and let's let the Kurds go in there. And then they'll draw out the military. On the news, they thought this was a great idea. Oh, that sounds great. The Kurds can come in and assist. I'm like, are you stupid? First of all, America did not help the Kurds when Turkey came in there. More than 30% of those Kurds, they not gonna be with the program. They gonna say F America. They only doing it because they boss gonna tell them to do it. But they don't really want to fight that war. Most of those people gonna defect, and they're gonna stash half of the guns and weapons that y'all give them. Only some of them are going to battle, and that some of them gonna get wiped out. And you're gonna lose those weapons to the Iranians. And the press is gonna get a hold of it. All the Kurds got wiped out that the U.S. sent in there to Iran. Now they're gonna look weak because they was like, why didn't you send the U.S. troops? You sent the Kurds in there to get wiped out. Oops. Now they got egg on their face. So Trump's like, no, we're not sending in the Kurds. No, we don't need to do that. They want to go. We don't need to do it. So then he says, we will not. Right, we're going to have absolute surrender. Now you got to pay attention to these words because this is Trump logic. So you got to bear with it. It's really stupid. Now, what is absolute surrender? What does that even mean? Right? So, absolute surrender doesn't mean the United States actually take occupancy of Iran. Right? You would think absolute surrender means they surrender the country. No. They said absolute surrender is when the president declares it's an absolute surrender. So whenever Donald Trump says it's an absolute surrender, that's when it is. So it's whatever Donald Trump wants it to be. They literally said that outside of the White House. I cannot make this up. I told you, I said 4 to 5 weeks with this war. Trump said 2 to 3 days. Who was more realistic, me or our president of the United States of America? We're already at week 1 with no sign of this thing dying down. They lied and said Iran has contacted them and tried to do a ceasefire. Iran told you exactly what I said. There's no way in hell they called them talking about a ceasefire. Nothing about them. They was like, we did not sit there and call them at all. There's been no one who's contacted the United States. They've reached out talking about let's come to the table and talk ceasefire. And Iran 3 times said, nah, none of that. Now Iran has picked a new supreme leader. So I guess Donald Trump didn't have a selection in that. He was left out. I thought he was going to pick the supreme leader. Oh well. Now, because over the weekend, Iran has taken out they SATCOM radio. They couldn't, all their communications was hit. They knew where to strike, where to hit, and they wouldn't listen to a former retired colonel who tried to give them the advice and the intelligence. They didn't want to listen. So 5 days later, they come back, and everything that retired colonel and general said, he was telling them the truth. He actually has combat experience. He's actually been over in the Middle East. Why wouldn't you listen to him? Instead, you're listening to people like Ted Cruz, who knows nothing about Iran. And it's like, is there any intelligence in the intelligence booth? Donald Trump looking like Donald Gump right now. And it's sad. It's actually pathetic that this is supposed to be our commander-in-chief. And what did I always tell you about Trump? He doesn't give me the impression of a commander-in-chief. I've always said that till it echoed. He just don't give me the impression of a commander-in-chief. He gives me the take of a tyrant. Just a spoiled little boy trying to prove he's a man. And those kind of people are dangerous with power, as you can see. Trump's not even a businessman. He's what you would call a bad businessman. He does bad business over and over again until it fails, gets the buyout, and moves to something else. All the business fails, crumbles, and he picks up the pieces and moves and leave everybody else holding the bag. That's been his formula. Your formula is failure at every turn, you know. How do you expect to survive if that is your formula? We're just gonna keep failing upwards? Where they do that at? The economy is already affected by this. The energy levels are sky high. Look how gas is right now. Y'all was raving about gas, right? You like where the gas at now? Y'all wondering why the gas so high? Y'all like, where the gas so high for? That don't make any sense. Oh, it makes sense. You just ain't thinking about it the right way. But it makes a lot of sense. Now, what you need to ask yourself is what the country is planning to do about it. And that's why I'm like, where's all the conservatives? All the Republicans? They had all those people pushing for everybody to win. Where they at? I don't see them, Chief. Hearing a lot of nonsense. He said the cost of gold and silver is up. Don't be fooled by those numbers. What they do is once the reports come out and they see that the numbers are dropped, they try to use scarcity and they go into the Treasury bond fund to boost those numbers up and inflate them so people could believe that the gold and silver is right where it needs to be. Oh no, gold and silver is good. No, it's not. Smart people know. The longer this war goes, the worse it's gonna get. Last time I saw the bill, it was $10 billion the United States have spent on this war. $10 billion in a week. Well, we need to start looking at the problem and facing the major problem. So when the major problem that we're facing is not measuring up to the standards that we're supposed to uphold as a nation, and then you got people just blindly going along with it, no proof, no evidence, no anything, and they're just blindly going along with it. Stupid. But you're worried about people getting Section 8 housing, places you don't even go. I don't want my tax money going into Section 8 housing, but you want your tax money going into a plane that's getting shot down in the ocean over what? Nothing? You don't even know. Man, they was trying to attack America. They ain't got a missile that can hit America in 60, 70 years. And they got one now? Nope. Once again, bypassing Congress, starting your own war, because they would have to investigate to see what the hell are you talking about? What's really going on here? Yet and still, what do we see? Same old, right? Yes, there's going to be mass homelessness. Every time there's a war, you know what's going to go up? Inflation. The same thing he promised to get down. No new wars. We've been in what, 2, 3? Since he's been in office, that's all we've been in is war. So much for that promise. Now, he's focusing on Cuba. I'm like, dude, whoa, hold on. Why are you talking about Cuba when you fighting with Iran? Well, you keep putting people in wars. Of course the gold is going to fall. It's not going to fall that low before they pick it back up. Because if it falls low enough and people buy it, shoot, it was at a point where it was the lowest it's been since 1980. You know what people did? They started buying gold. So they had to push the numbers up to inflate them because they didn't want everybody going in there rushing and buying gold. They want you to buy it for that price. It's like if somebody go to the store, right? And you see a sale sticker on something that ain't supposed to be on sale. And you go, hey man, y'all got a whole thing stacked up there with the wrong price on it. So I gotta get that for that price, dog. Y'all need to go back there and change that sign. But hey, that's false advertising. I gotta get it for that price. So they gonna do that and they gonna mark it up to try to keep it there. First thing I told them to do was attack gold. Like, look, get gold. What are we doing here? Get gold. Market is something that can be manipulated, but they have regulators in there to make sure, hey, let's make sure this is legit. Right? When there's a war of this magnitude, people will come in and try to position themselves. Iran is going to lose a lot of their power and influence because now there'll be a tug of war between Russia and China as to who's going to be ruling the Middle East. See, because at the end of the day, that's their ultimate goal. How much could they rule? How much could they dominate? Ultimate is ultimate. You want to know what's real, what's fake, what's reality, what isn't reality. No. Yeah. So hitting that refinery is a desperational move. You'd rather sacrifice oil, right? You'd rather do that because you're desperate to try to win a war that you're not winning. Well, they have to be careful in certain zones because there's a nuclear warhead planted on the other side, outside of Tehran. Well, a lot of people talk that talk, but they don't know how to walk the walk. You done beat me here. Oh, there's 3 of them. Hey! Hey, doggies. Hello. They're like, hey! Another dog like, I'm tired. I'm gone. That's Sesame and his crew now. If they get out that gate, I'm gonna be running. So, yeah, well, when you're dealing with society, you're dealing with people who don't seem to understand that there's a status quo. You're doing great. So you got all of these different scenarios taking place, And no one is having any success whatsoever. Well, here's the thing. When you lose your communications and you're complaining that Russia is helping because you got to have an excuse or a reason as to why you're losing, as the UK is helping the United States, Israel, you got Israel, the United States, and the UK, and you're mad because you think Russia's helping. But y'all the most powerful people in the nation. Talking about a ground attack, really? Like I told you, Iran's location makes it almost a battlefront. Right now, they're manufacturing more drones because they have drones that they can just keep sending up in the air whenever they feel like. And they'll use those $20,000 drones to take out $4 million missiles. The PAC-3 missile that is on those ships costs $4 million a pop. Those drones that Iran is using cost $20,000 to make. So you think about it, $20,000 versus your $4 million each pop. So all the money for your tariffs is getting dumped right into war. Everybody with a gun channel is going crazy. Because, yeah, they got a gun channel, they going crazy, but are they crazy enough to go to Iran? If not, then sit your ass down. You so gun crazy, take your ass over there to Iran. Go fight. Since you so gun crazy. They don't want to hear that. What they got to do that for? Go fight for America. America has not been under attack. Iran did not attack America at all. Yet you will hear that lie that they declared war on us. They're fighting with Israel. Israel struck them first. And why do we have to fight Israel's war? Go get Germany, right? The Holocaust wasn't in America. Why are we fighting your war? Why is there military bases in the Middle East? Right? To protect Israel. So they blew them all up. We knew where their soldiers would be located. They knew where your ships were going to be in the water. Now, Russia had all this information. How did they get it? How could they possess all this information and you didn't know any of it? Now, when people start making rules, decisions, actions, you know, they constantly forge the numbers. You know, they fudge them a little bit because they can. And no one's going to check all them 6 bodies coming back off the plane. They wanted to make the scene. Trump is celebrating, you know, saluting the 6 soldiers that died. 6 soldiers that died. What about the other ones? I'm telling you, war is a body of lies. Damn, all my neighbors' houses is better than mine. I'm like, I've never been on this side. I'm like, shoot. How the hell their houses get better than mine? Of course Iran is fighting back. Why wouldn't they fight back? They were prepared. The United States was stupid because we have a stupid commander-in-chief. We got Gump in there, and that's really an insult to Forrest Gump. He was at least a genius. He kept inventing stuff. Now, Doofus thought this would be a 3-day war and tried to do a sneak attack. Well, not try, actually do it while they were negotiating with Iran. And with their representatives sitting right there as they're negotiating, they do a sneak attack and kill the Ayatollah, thinking that they would crumble, come to the table and make a deal. It was the dumbest decision probably in war history. Well, many people lose their rights when they keep going down a fiduciary plan to keep reaching out to people and a array of different options. Yeah, you see that big gigantic beehive up in there? Man, stay the heck away from that thing. Yeah, it's a nice weather right now. It was windy, and the wind went past. Now it's a bright sunny day. They said today was gonna be like 70 degrees. Then it's gonna go back to 20 and 30. So this when people really gonna start to get sick. Well, you want good optics, right? If the optics isn't good, what are you gonna do? Well, imagine you put yourself in a predicament where the people around you try to amass, a portfolio of what you should do and how you should do it, and you don't follow that script. You do your own thing. War has brought out the worst in people. Then you got people who don't know what they're talking about, like Ted Cruz, who go out and just speak and has no information whatsoever about the country. He didn't even know how many people are in the country. He didn't know anything about the country. Then he's like, you're going to war with a country, and you're the one that should be knowing all this, Ted Cruz. I'm Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz don't have to know anything except for how many Iranians there are. Do you know? Yeah, 92 million. Well, that's good for you. But Ted Cruz don't need to know how many there are. There ain't that many now, because we've been tearing them up. I'm like, this dude is crazy. And then these are the people you guys elected to be in office, saying they know how to run our country. I'm just saying, if Joe Biden would have done any of this, would you conservatives be happy? Absolutely not. You'd be livid. Well, she was really cool to a degree. And that's when things just started to go off the rails. T.I.'s son is tripping. I think a lot of them peoples is tripping. A lot of them dudes don't have a clue what's going on. Especially out there. Well, you know I gotta get my morning steps on. I done put in an hour just talking to y'all right now. And I've been walking for 20 minutes before I did that. Confused. So I'll try to make it, they have to make it make sense. Where's the intelligence? How would you know that they have nuclear weapons or they're developing it? Where's the investigation? Where's any of it? He said, can you explain to us how can Trump do so much when Obama couldn't do anything? Everything we have to wait for Congress. What is going on? Well, who runs Congress and who runs the House? The Republicans, right? And you said Trump doing everything as if it was a good thing. What has Trump done that was good? If Obama done any of the things Trump just done right now, there'd be right now a riot in the streets to get him out of office. Trump has driven inflation up to an all-time high. His approval rating is one of the lowest in presidential history. Gas prices are sky high right now. All that tariff money, you didn't see any of it. Nope. Appreciate the super chat though, Ralph. But to say Trump has done anything, I'm curious to know, what did he do? Obama restrictions on Iran that prevented them from making any type of advancements on nuclear weapons. And your president, Donald Trump, decided to waive that. He cleared it to give them no sanctions so they can go ahead and do it. You eliminated the sanctions that would have them not do it. Whenever the president of the United States and the White House use Call of Duty footage to try to show how they're winning the war, I would never trust that regime ever in life. When a regime tells you a war is going to be over in 2-3 days, I wouldn't trust that regime in my life. When a regime tells you no more new wars, we're never going to war, he's eliminating wars. Biden was all about going to war. He wasn't going to war. I would never trust that regime ever in my life. So, what more do they have to do for y'all to realize They so full of shit, you can't even trust nothing that comes out of their mouth. What more do they have to do? Man told you he got shot in the ear by an AR bullet. And his ear is perfectly fine. No scarring, nothing. Hey. And what was confusing was all these gun people who claim they know about guns. They were stuck because they knew that didn't even make sense to them. They were like, I don't know about this one. Because if an AR bullet goes past your ear, it will burn and sear your entire ear. Trump tax cuts. What tax cuts? What cut did you see that benefited you? Nothing. The 1%, his buddies, they're profiting. They like the way things are going. Well, when you paying $6 for a gallon of milk, eggs and meat still high, but yet Trump is doing so well. He kidnapped the president of Venezuela. Because he's trying to keep drugs out of the country, and he let a drug dealer free in the process of doing it. We're doing this at, people, and why? I'm saying, damn. I'm looking at it now. Damn, would Kamala have been this bad? Jeez. It's a disaster. This presidential run has been a disaster. An absolute failure. In epic proportion. We're spending $10 billion plus in 1 week against Iran. Woo! That's a good burn. In Norway, the U.S. Embassy got bombed. So, no. People have to understand that when you're dealing with war, when you're dealing with war, most people are going to make that assumption. They're going to move into that plight, that step to say this is what it is and this is how it's, transpiring out here. hmm Well, Iran got a new missile. It's cost $1 million. $1 million. You want to learn about it? This is it.
That's what 7 million people in Israel did last night. And what they saw in the sky above them was something no missile defense engineer, no Pentagon strategist, no American general ever wanted the world to see. Not one missile coming down, hundreds from a single launch. Iran has now deployed cluster missiles in active combat. And if you don't understand what that means yet, you need to, because it doesn't just change this war. It breaks the entire logic that modern missile defense is built on. And once you understand how it works, you'll understand why America's most expensive defense systems are suddenly useless against it. Here's the science. And stay with me because this is where it gets terrifying. A normal missile defense system works like this. Radar detects an incoming missile, tracks its path, calculates the trajectory, and fires an interceptor to destroy it. One threat, one response. The system was engineered for that equation. Billions of dollars spent perfecting it. Decades of testing to get the intercept rate high enough that governments could tell their citizens, you're protected. Iran just broke that equation in half. A cluster missile launches as a single projectile. Radar detects it, one target. Defense system calculates the interceptor fires. And then, at a specific altitude, at the precise moment the defense system is committed, the missile opens. And from that single casing, Hundreds of individual warheads released simultaneously, spreading across a wide area and continuing toward the ground. By the time the defense system realizes what's happening, the intercept window is gone. The one interceptor that fired hits the empty casing. The hundreds of submunitions are already falling, and to stop them now, you need hundreds of interceptors, launched in the same second, which no system on Earth is designed to do. What you're seeing in the videos right now, the ones that look like fireworks exploding across the Israeli sky, those bright trails spreading outward like an umbrella, that's not one missile being hit. That's one missile becoming hundreds. That's the moment the defense system realizes it's already lost. Iran has essentially invented a way to make a single missile function, like an entire missile barrage. And the world watched it work in real time last night. But here's what makes this even more devastating. And this is the piece that the military briefings are trying to keep quiet. The cluster munition problem doesn't just overwhelm interceptors. It overwhelms the entire defense budget calculation. America's most advanced interceptor missiles cost between $3 million and $9 million each. A single cluster missile from Iran's arsenal costs a fraction of that. To reliably defend against one cluster launch, trying to take out submunitions individually, you'd need to fire dozens of interceptors in the same moment. That's $100 million to $300 million in defense spending to stop a single incoming cluster strike. Iran can launch dozens of these in a night. And remember what we told you last week. America's interceptor stockpiles are already running low. Former Secretary of State Antony Blinken said it publicly. The Pentagon is leaking it privately. The supply is limited, and the production timeline to replace what's being burned takes years. Now add cluster missiles to that equation, and you understand why people inside the Pentagon are not sleeping right now. But the military dimension, as catastrophic as it is, isn't even the biggest story breaking today. Because Iran just hit something that has nothing to do with soldiers, missiles, or military bases. Iran struck a Microsoft data center in the Gulf. Think about what that means for a second. Not an airstrip, not a weapons depot, not a command post. A data center, the physical infrastructure that runs cloud computing, financial systems, corporate networks, AI services, and digital communications for thousands of companies operating across the Middle East. This is Iran telling the world something very specific. The battlefield is no longer just physical. Every piece of American economic infrastructure in the region, every data center, every financial hub, and every digital investment is now a legitimate target. And here's the context that makes that strike feel like a preview rather than a one-off event. Iran is already talking about phase 2, cyber attacks on American infrastructure, power grids, water systems, financial networks inside the United States itself. Phase 1 is what you've been watching. Missiles, drones, burning oil facilities, canceled flights, a retreating carrier group. Phase 2 hasn't started yet, but the Microsoft data center just told you it's coming. A billionaire just publicly humiliated the President of the United States. Not a political opponent, not a foreign leader, a Gulf businessman, one of the UAE's most prominent developers and investors, a man who has spent his career building the most spectacular real estate, educational, and construction projects across the Gulf, sat down and wrote Donald Trump a letter that is being shared across the Arab world right now. The message was simple and devastating. Who gave you the right? Who gave you the right to bring a war into the most peaceful, prosperous region on earth and burn it to the ground for Israel's benefit? Who gave you the right to destroy what took decades to build? Who gave you the right to turn cities where people walk safely at 4 a.m. into cities where nobody can sleep? When billionaires write letters like that, when the people who have the most invested in stability and the most to lose from conflict start publicly breaking with American policy, it means the calculation has already shifted at the top. The public letter is the visible part. The investment withdrawals are the real part, and those withdrawals are now happening. This is the story that matters more than any single missile strike, more than any individual military development, more than all the dramatic footage of cluster bombs over Tel Aviv. Gulf sovereign wealth funds, which collectively represent trillions of dollars in assets built on decades of oil revenue, are formally reviewing their overseas investments, specifically their commitments to the United States. The $5 trillion in investment that Trump came to the Gulf to secure, the deals he announced with fanfare as evidence of American economic dominance, that pipeline is being reviewed, possibly redirected, possibly withdrawn. Here's why this is the financial equivalent of an extinction-level event for American economic power. The petrodollar system, the arrangement where Gulf states sell oil in US dollars and reinvest those dollars into American assets, is the invisible foundation under everything Americans take for granted economically. It's why the US can borrow at relatively low interest rates despite carrying $33 trillion in debt. It's why the dollar remains the world's reserve currency even though America hasn't balanced its budget in decades. It's why American consumers can buy imported goods at prices that would be impossible if the dollar weren't so globally dominant. Remove Gulf investment from American markets, and you don't just lose some foreign capital, you trigger a cascade.
That's right. You trigger a cascade.
Interest rates on U.S. debt rise because there's less demand for treasury bonds. The dollar weakens. Inflation gets harder to control.
Yep.
The Federal Reserve faces impossible choices between fighting inflation and supporting growth simultaneously. And here's what makes this moment different from every previous strain on the petrodollar system. The Gulf states aren't just unhappy, they have an alternative. China has been building that alternative for 15 years. Alternative payment systems, UN-denominated oil contracts, infrastructure investment relationships that don't come with F-16s and military base requirements attached. The Gulf switching its financial alignment from Washington to Beijing isn't a theoretical possibility anymore. It's a process that has already begun, and this war is accelerating it dramatically. Now let's add the intelligence dimension, because something is happening with China's involvement in this conflict that the American military genuinely cannot explain. Iranian strike accuracy has been remarkable throughout this conflict. Precise hotel rooms in Bahrain where American officials were staying, specific buildings where Mossad personnel operated, the exact location of the Theta Ad radar system in Jordan. Targets that should have been protected by layers of operational security, classified location data, and intelligence compartmentalization, being hit with precision that suggests someone knows exactly where those assets are.
Yeah, they do. And as you can see, that's where it's at. So, on that note, we out.